Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story, a blacklisted Chinese firm picking a fight with the U.S. government. What we know about its lawsuit against Washington. Punishing China for what the U.S. calls cheating. President Biden hiking taxes on $18 billion worth of Chinese imports, from electric vehicles to solar panels.
The issue, though, is Biden doing this very late in his term, just before the November 5 election. This should have been done on the first day, because on the first day that he was in the Oval Office, China was engaging in these practices.
Deepening a no-limits partnership, Russian President Vladimir Putin is set to visit China this week, the first foreign trip since his re-election. And the UK hitting back at Chinese espionage efforts, summoning China's ambassador and charging 3 suspects. Another Chinese company is suing the U.S. government. Called Hesai, it was blacklisted by the Pentagon for its connection to the Chinese military. The ban would block the U.S. military and contractors from using Hesai's LidAR products starting in 2026. LidAR helps self-driving cars create a 3D map of the road. Some U.S. lawmakers have raised concerns that the technology could collect data on American drivers and share those details with China. Hesai makes almost half of the world's LidAR. The company is asking a U.S. district court to order the government to remove it from the blacklist, arguing that no Chinese military entity has influence over its management. The DoD said it does not comment on matters of litigation. Unfair trade practices are in the spotlight. President Biden hiking tariffs on $18 billion worth of Chinese imports, while Trump says he's the one who started it. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has the details.
President Biden on Tuesday announced that he's raising tariffs on an array of Chinese imports, in particular in strategic industries, and that includes tripling tariffs on steel and aluminum to 25%, doubling the rate on semiconductors to 50%, and quadrupling tariffs on Chinese EVs to 100%. And President Biden says that's to punish China for its unfair trade practices that hurt American businesses. Watch.
China heavily subsidized all these products, pushing Chinese companies to produce far more than the rest of the world can absorb, and then dumping the excess products onto the market at unfairly low prices, driving other manufacturers around the world out of business. It's not competition, it's cheating.
The Biden administration also announced that it's now officially keeping the over $300 billion worth of tariffs imposed on China by Trump. It comes as both Biden and Trump are trying to appeal to voters as the tougher on China candidates, sometimes using strikingly similar rhetoric.
Europe is being flooded with Chinese cars, but I'm not going to allow it to happen in our car and truck industry.
They're driving manufacturing companies out of business in Europe, but we won't let that happen here in America.
The White House says Trump's tariffs are too broad, while Biden's are effective and targeted and will not raise prices on American consumers. But former President Trump this morning says Biden's new tariffs are too little, too late.
I guess they should have done it a long time ago, but they've also got to do it on other vehicles, and they have to do it on a lot of other products, because China's eating our lunch right now.
And as the Chinese government is trying to rely on a surge of exports to revive its slumping economic growth, the new tariffs can really not only deal a blow to China's global ambitions in strategic industries, but also thwart that means of revival for the Chinese economy. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
To discuss more about Biden's new tariffs on Chinese goods and what that could mean for American industries, NTD's Business Matters host Don Ma spoke with veteran China expert Gordon Chang. He's a distinguished senior fellow at the Gatestone Institute and author of The Great U.S.-China Tech War.
Gordon, thank you so much for your time today. Biden increasing tariffs on Chinese products, quadruple actually on Chinese EVs here. To start off, I want to ask you, is this a good move from the Biden administration?
Well, this is certainly a good move. China's been engaged in predatory and criminal trade practices, and we had to do something. The issue, though, is Biden doing this very late in his term, just before the November 5 election. This should have been done on the first day, because on the first day that he was in the Oval Office, China was engaging in these practices. So, for instance, China has been stealing U.S. intellectual property for decades, and it hasn't stopped. And really, that covers all of the areas that you mentioned. But also, there's the issue that has generally been called overcapacity, and that is China providing these enormous subsidies to create industrial ability to more than just satisfy the Chinese market, but to satisfy the entire world market a couple times over. So clearly, China has been trying to put foreign producers out of business, and that is predatory.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier that this may be coming a little bit too late. So the other question is, will this have an impact, these tariffs, will this have an impact on what China's been doing?
I think it will, because Xi Jinping, his only real plan to rescue the Chinese economy is to double down on exports. He has abandoned the property sector. He is not trying to increase consumption by empowering consumers. Really, his only way out right now is selling more to the world. And he needs access to global markets, and he especially needs access to the U.S. market. So this will have an effect. We know this from 2018 when President Trump also imposed tariffs under Section 301, and that affected China then. This will affect China now.
So China has already responded to these increases, the announcement here, talking about protecting its own interests. Are we going to see an escalation in the trade war, so to speak?
Probably there will be escalation. China always tries to intimidate others into backing down, so I anticipate there will be some Chinese action, but I don't know how effective it will be. China shouldn't push too far, because really what Biden should be doing is, instead of increasing in tariffs, or in addition to increasing tariffs, he just needs to ban the importation into the United States of China's products that are made with forced or slave labor. The Tariff Act of 1930, as amended by the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act of 2021, prevents China's goods from coming into the U.S. because, especially in the green area, most of them are made with such type of prohibited labor. So China shouldn't press too far.
Yeah, that's a very good point here, Gordon. So, whether it's banning imports or levying tariffs here, is that going to increase the costs for everyday Americans if they can't get the access to these cheap Chinese goods?
There may be some increase in cost, but it won't be that significant. And we know this from the Section 301 tariffs that President Trump imposed, that then in 2018, China, the government and exporters together absorbed about 4/5, actually more than 4/5 of the cost of those tariffs. And China's probably going to do the same thing right now, one way or another.
All right. Very well said here, Gordon. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Don.
An order from President Biden is putting up roadblocks for a Chinese-backed firm. The directive will outlaw the company from owning land near an American nuclear missile base, citing national security concerns. The White House on Monday gave the company 4 months to comply with the rule and sell a property that violates it. The company owns land located within 1 mile from the Francis E. Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming. That facility is home to part of the U.S. nuclear arsenal, as well as intercontinental ballistic missiles. The company in question is a cryptocurrency miner called Mine One Partners. According to the White House, it's owned by Chinese nationals. The United States has become increasingly concerned about the national security risks posed by Chinese-led purchases of American property near sensitive military sites. With election season in full swing, both President Biden and Trump have told voters that they'll be tough on China. The head of the Chinese Communist Party will welcome Russian President Vladimir Putin to Beijing on Thursday. This is Putin's second trip to China within a year, a sign of the countries deepening their relationship amid global crises. The trip also marks Putin's first foreign trip since taking up his new 6-year term in office. The two countries declared a no-limits partnership in 2022, just days before Putin sent troops into Ukraine. Under sanctions by the West over the Ukraine war, trade between Russia and China has surged in the last 2 years. Western countries view the increased trade as China's support for Russia. The competition for influence over a Balkan country intensifying between Beijing and the European Union. An EU commissioner visited Serbia Monday, saying he hoped the next European Commission would see Serbia join the bloc.
The next Commission will have to put all of its work and effort to get the new members into the European Union.
The commissioner's visit comes on the heels of Chinese leader Xi Jinping's visit to Serbia, who was met with a lavish welcome. The Serbian president said, quote, "The sky is the limit when it comes to working with Beijing." China has poured billions of dollars into Serbia. The country has been key in China's Belt and Road Initiative in Europe. This project aims to increase Beijing's influence around the globe through economic investment. Critics say it could serve as a Trojan horse for China and a gateway to Europe. Serbia has been friendly toward China and Russia, but it's also seeking membership in the EU. The EU commissioner said Serbia has to align further with EU foreign policy. Serbia for years has been balancing ties among Moscow, Beijing, Brussels, and Washington. It refused to join Western sanctions on Russia over its war in Ukraine. The Ukraine's first lady visited Serbia and met its president on Monday. It's her first visit to Serbia since the Russian invasion. Roughly half of Chinese electric vehicle imports come from Western manufacturers. That's according to German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Here's what he said Tuesday at a joint press conference when asked about potential European Union tariffs on Chinese EVs.
We should not forget that European manufacturers, as well as some American manufacturers, are successful on the Chinese market and also sell a lot of vehicles that are produced in Europe to China.
Scholz's Swedish counterpart expressed a similar message, saying a wider trade war is not the way to go. Last November, the European Commission announced a probe into Chinese subsidies in the EV industry. Officials fear that the influx of Chinese electric vehicles is driving down the prices of locally made models. As of 2023, the bloc reported Chinese companies made up about 8% of Europe's EV market, and that number is expected to reach 15% by 2025. But once the investigation is over, the EU could ramp up tariffs on Chinese EVs beyond the current 10% rate. The UK taking a stand in cyberspace. The British Foreign Ministry summoned the Chinese ambassador Tuesday, saying Chinese espionage and cyber attacks are unacceptable. Here's what the chief of Britain's spy agency said on Tuesday.
Russia and Iran pose immediate threats. But China is the epoch-defining challenge. Responding to the scale and complexity of this challenge is GCHQ's top priority. And we now devote more resource to China than any other single mission.
According to the head of British intelligence and security agency GCHQ, China poses an increasing cyber risk, and China is her agency's top priority. The remark comes after a major breach of a payment system used by the British armed forces. The UK suspects China is behind the hack. Beijing denies the accusation. Over in the U.S., Chinese hackers also targeted over 20 American pipeline operators. Officials warn that China threat is closing in.
We found persistent PRC access in our critical telecommunications, energy, water, and other infrastructure sectors. All of this with the goal of giving the Chinese government the ability to wait for just the right moment to deal a devastating blow. From the FBI's perspective, these threats are not over the horizon. They're upon us now.
PRC is short for China's official name, the People's Republic of China. Beijing announcing a new plan to raise money to stimulate the economy. The goal is to drum up about $140 billion through issuing government bonds. China's finance ministry confirmed Monday that it will start issuing the bonds this week. China says the money will be used to stimulate key sectors of its sluggish economy. China set a very ambitious economic growth target of 5% for 2024, and it may be the driving force behind the decision to issue bonds. Many experts are casting doubt about whether China can meet that growth target. That's as trade tensions between the U.S. and China rise and the country's once powerhouse real estate sector falls. Historically, China has issued these bonds 3 times. All of them marked hard times for the economy during Asia's financial crisis in 1998, the global financial crisis in 2007, and at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. As war rages in Ukraine, some Ukrainians are turning to what they call a source of inner peace, a mind-body meditation practice rooted in ancient Chinese tradition. On Monday, a celebration for World Falun Dafa Day was held in Kyiv, the Ukrainian capital. Watch.
In war-torn Ukraine, destruction left behind by explosions are everywhere.
There was a strong explosion near our house, and the windows shook. It was around 5 a.m. My heart was shaking, and my body felt as limp as cotton.
Carolina and her husband decided not to leave Kyiv 2 years ago, when Russian troops invaded the country and started with bombardment. They say their secret to fighting stress is their belief in Falun Gong.
Through practicing the exercises, I found my inner balance again. I realized that not only could I calm myself down, but I could also help others.
The couple visited bomb shelters, hoping to help their community. A small group of people joined them to learn the slow-moving meditative exercises of Falun Gong.
They realized that doing these exercises is really effective and can help them.
Falun Dafa is a traditional meditation system that originated in China. The practice teaches 3 guiding principles: truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance, with emphasis on high moral character and kindness towards others. Those that practice say the exercises also bring physical benefits. Carolina has been practicing for more than 20 years and says that it significantly improved both her health and her mood. On May 13th, Falun Gong practitioners in Kyiv gathered in a park to celebrate World Falun Dafa Day and introduce the practice to more Ukrainians.
We are all responsible for the energy on this earth. The hearts of the people are full of light, love, and faith. We hope to bring more light to people.
NTD News, Kyiv.
That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for 3 years. If you'd like to support us, consider donating. Find us at donorbox.org/China-in-focus or subscribe to our partner platform Epic TV, where you can watch our full episodes. Just click the link down below. Here's what to look out for in our second half. The U.S. and China hoping to reach an agreement on the risks of AI as officials meet in Geneva for the first high-level meeting on the topic. What's their strategy? A look at China's rapid strides in the AI race and its push for domestic innovation. How can Washington safeguard American-made AI? And a New York-based Chinese classical dance group wraps up its 2024 season. We take a look at what some audience members are saying about this year's performance and what's next for Shenyun's dancers and musicians. More on that after the break here on China in Focus. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you tomorrow.